and await keywords in C#, which was interesting because I've never used them myself, and then something went horribly wrong with one of the projects last week, so I had no prep time either. So last week's DevEd was rather impromptu. This one actually has some code, and hopefully some more reasonable examples. So as you all probably noticed yesterday, EmoteBot appeared on our internal HitChat servers. EmoteBot doesn't do very much. He sends emoticons and gives weather reports of cities in America, because that was the only API I could find quickly. And despite what it probably looked like yesterday, I didn't actually spend all day writing EmoteBot, just bits in between other things. So I picked it because sort of a bot seems a fairly sort of classic async-like situation. It's a program that sits around potentially listening to lots of different things, but none of the stuff it's doing is actually particularly intensive. But you want it to stay responsive even if it's already handling a request from someone else. So there you go. That's an example of the wonderful kind of conversations you can have with EmoteBot if you go into a chat room and chat to it. So this is our code for EmoteBot. It's fairly rushed from yesterday. It's basically a whole load of external packages pumped together and with a little bit of code wrapping them up to do what we want. So this relies on an XMPP library, which is one of the protocols HipChat will talk to you as a chat server. It uses the Weather Underground API to get the weather results, and it uses a whole load of the reactive extensions, which I think are done on Microsoft, but they're a sort of fairly official .NET enhancement that play very nicely with the new async stuff. I think they are, yes. I think they're one of Microsoft's kind of, we're kind of open source, but Microsoft do all the work projects. Then we have a very simple configuration thing, which would need to be reworked if you started expanding EmoteBot out. Basically, it recursively reads up directories until it finds an emotebot.config, and then it assumes that there is one config value per line, which are in the right order for what it expects. So, you know, a highly extensible and and user-friendly system. The advantage of it is that it means that I haven't had to check the config file into Git, which is always nice when it contains, you know, sort of API keys and logins and all the rest of it. And sorry, the weather command, because I won't actually probably go into too much detail on this, but the weather command is just a little class that knows about the weather API. It knows a regex, which it will interpret as a valid command to go and get a weather report, and it knows how to get US forecasts. So that's fine. We'll come back to that a bit more in a moment. So most of EmoteBot at the moment is just a single program.cs file. Which is not terribly well laid out. So this is actually everything that EmoteBot says, apart from weather reports. So he just picks a response at random. And apart from that, we've basically just got a whole load of static bits and pieces which are read in from the config file or shared between it. We've got a bit of setup work where basically we get our configuration, we set the room that it's going to listen in. So for the DevEd, I've set it to listen in the EmoteBot testing room. Use up one of those weather command classes, sets up an XMPP client, logs in, hooks up a login event, which we'll get to in a moment. And then we get to the main bulk of the program, which it calls this async.main.wait. So obviously the idea of an async function, as we were talking about last week, is it's the idea that this function kind of represents a unit of work which you want to get done at some point, but you don't really care when. So when you call the function, by default, it will return immediately, an async function, it will return immediately with something called waitable, which generally means one of these task objects from which have been available in C# for a while. It will return immediately, and then you can choose to wait for that result to be complete, or you can carry on doing other stuff, and that task will slowly process in the background. You don't care how, but at some point in the future that result will be ready. Given that's what an async function represents, you can't have an async main function. Does that make sense to everyone? Because if you did that, all that would happen is your program would go, hey, I might create some results sometime in the future. I'm returning now. And finish. And you could actually do that in the community preview release of the feature, and then they decided that was silly, so they just made it a compile error and told you to go away. So what this does is all my main function does once it's sort of loaded in the config file is it kicks off async main, which is an async method, and then it waits for it to return. It's going to be waiting a long time because async main doesn't return. It just effectively sits in an event loop and waits for things to happen. So what does async main do? At the moment, it looks a bit nasty, but it's actually fairly straightforward. So this is where the reactive libraries come in. So the reactive libraries effectively allow you to set up something that looks a bit like an IEnumerable, but new items get pushed onto it. So effectively it's kind of a publish-subscribe method, but the interface within your program looks like an IEnumerable, and you can do link on it for selecting and filtering and all the rest of it.
Sometimes refer to it as link to events, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, you can, well, as you can see here, I'm using a helper function to hook up an event to this one, which, yeah, is sort of where the link to events come from. You can make your own observable things as well, or you can even just manually push things onto an observer from another part of your code as well. They're pretty flexible, actually. They're quite nice. So I'm saying, okay, I'm a chatbot. What do? I listen for messages, preferably messages that talk about me, so that I can say something back. So the XMPP client that I'm using is a nice, sort of .NET type interface. So it fires a on-message event whenever a message gets, whenever a message appears on the server that this user can see. So it could be in the room that it's listening. It could be a one-to-one message if someone opens a one-to-one conversation with EmoteBot. There's also a whole load of sort of presence events and that kind of thing. People joining and leaving rooms, people logging in and out if you've subscribed to it, those sort of bits. So what we've done is okay, from event pattern, we're interested in the on-message event. One thing which you probably all noticed yesterday is that XMPP, which I didn't know, by default, when you log in, it promptly resends you every message that's ever been made in that room, which is why EmoteBot got a bit enthusiastic yesterday on one occasion when it logged in and said a lot of stuff very quickly. So what I've done here, there's probably something more subtle you can do with this, but basically this one picks the date time 4 seconds in the future from when this function starts, and it just says throw away any events that happen before that time. So it just discards them, doesn't care. At the moment, we're listening out in a chat room, and we're only in one room, so we can filter quite simply just by saying that actually we're only interested in messages which are group group chat messages. So there's different message types in XMPP. So it can be a one-to-one chat message, it can be error, it can be a group chat, a headline, or a normal message. I'm not quite sure what a normal message is, because I would have thought a chat message was a normal message. I haven't actually dug into it to find out. So already we're at the point here where we every time this on-message event fires, it sort of throws those ones away. Then we're filtering it down so that we only know about ones which are group chats. We don't care if people open a one-on-one conversation with EmoteBot. And then full sort of link style, we can put an aware filter there. So I've got my has mentioned function, which is down here. It's basically just there's a regex up at the top, which is that thing there. So basically, it's literally just a regex, whether it's got the nickname in the message body. And then the other very, very useful thing you can do with observables is there's a whole load of things you can do to control how often and how many of the events you get. So in this case, I didn't want EmoteBot replying to every mention. Because if lots of people mentioned EmoteBot, or if someone managed to trick EmoteBot into mentioning himself, I didn't want a sort of infinite cascade of messages going on. So this .throttle thing basically will only take a maximum, it will only pass on a maximum of one event every 5 seconds. So we'll just throw away all the ones in between. Kind of make sense? So there you go. That's a very, very brief introduction to the reactive programming. It would have taken a heck of a lot more code to write that as a batch of manual event handlers trying to chain them up in lovely ways. So because this is an async method, we can use the await keyword in it. So what this does at the moment is it just sits in a while loop, while true, and then I await a message from the observable. So in practice, that means that it basically waits there for roughly 5 seconds, depending how long it's taken to process the last message, until the next one comes through the throttle. A little bit of wonderful console.writeline logging. I already know at this point, because I've already filtered for it mentioning, that was not the key I was expecting, I've already filtered for it having mentions of me, that it's a mention of me. So I just send a response straight back, client will send a new message back to the room, because I filtered on it being group chat messages, so I know I'm talking to someone in the room. And I'm picking a random message from the responses up at the top, that array of strings to send out. I've also got my weather object that I knew up at the top. So I've got my isWeather command sanity check, see whether it reckons it's a valid weather command or not. If it is, I can await weather.getWeather. So again, at this point, I'm actually effectively signaling off to the compiler I'm willing to give up control at this point. I'm just waiting for a web service. You know, call the rest of this method once that result comes back. And then it sends a message out saying, you know, hey, I'm here. So that's EmoteBot as it is. I was thinking that at the moment, although this is async in theory, it only ever actually does one thing at a time, because it's just sitting in a single loop, listening to a single set of observables. So basically my thought for the rest of the thing was to add an extra command to EmoteBot that would be the kind of thing that you'd want it to listen to every occurrence of, rather than every 5 seconds. So basically, quick show of hands, shall we try and get EmoteBot to trigger builds on TeamCity or trigger deploys on Octopus? given the two other APIs I happen to have lying around.
I'll take Jira's for the hip chat.
I saw that, but I didn't have time to look into the Jira API for doing it. Preferences? Octopus, TeamCity, Hands, Octopus?
Octopus, yeah, I got one.
Fair enough. No one else seems to care, no. That's, right. So lying around here somewhere.
Does that mean in theory if it's running we can just tell it to deploy our stuff?
Yep.
From the pub? Oh. This is the least bit dangerous. It's best to be away from the building when you deploy it now. And just log into hip chat from anywhere. Exactly.
Sash. Thank you. Don't know what you were trying to load there, but right. So this is because I can never remember how to do it. No, that's the one for TeamCity. That's the wrong one, isn't it?
Yeah.
There you go. Right. Here we have the Octo, the Octo exe thing. So let's drop that into our paste that in there, and then add existing item. This has got to be the least efficient way of calling an external service, which actually has an API, by the way. But you know, it's probably going to be quicker to hack in something that calls the octo.exe. Okay, and then let's set that to let's try this misclick. Okay, so we've got our Octopus thing. We also need to throw away a couple of lines of the config, which are the TeamCity credentials. Thank you. And then let's add a couple of things here. So not even sure whether we need the Octopus user or whether it's yeah. Octopus user is the line after that. Okay. So we've got some configuration. Again, you probably wouldn't actually do it this way if you were writing a real program, but there we go. And we also want to change things around here because what we've got at the moment is effectively we've got a single event loop where we process everything, but we're only taking one message every 5 seconds. What we really want is we want commands. We should probably do it for the weather command as well, but I can't be bothered at the moment. We want commands like the weather command and this new thing we're writing for Octopus commands. We want them to listen to every message that matches their syntax. So we should see how well the resharper refactoring copes with async methods. Is it gone? hiding up there. Oh, there you go.
You have your sharp installed.
No, I don't. That's a good point. It's wrong computer.
There's a studio for that built in now.
It looks like it does, yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's actually extracted it quite well. So it's saying, await main emotes, and it's passing messages in. Things we want to swap that around slightly, because actually we're at a stage now where we don't want messages to that only come every 5 seconds. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add that on there. Can't remember the syntax now, but I've deleted it.
Timestamp per second, I think.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah. No. Okay, so that should do the same thing it was before.
Yeah, you're in settings.
Thank you. Let's just check that it's actually doing the same thing as before. So EmoteBot is saying, please talk to me, I'd like to be your friend. So, why do I have a different keyboard layout?
Tab keys, that's all.
Yes. And whilst it's thinking about that, we'll do whether, who knows the US state abbreviations? There we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't you say whether you
So it hasn't actually
doing an emoticon? No, it's doing the await. In your code, when you ask for weather, it gives you an emoticon and then the weather.
Yes.
So it might still be.
It might still be doing it, but pretty sure that I did that above as well.
Or we broke it.
Or I broke it. That's entirely possible too. Oh. I broke it. Null reference exception. There we go. For, oh, apparently there is no weather in Columbus today. So there we go. Nice to know. We'll kill that. Yeah, you'd probably want some error handling for real code, but yeah. Anyway, that was still trying to get a weather report, which is, good enough for my current current needs. Yeah. Okay, so we also want a method to do something else. So let's give ourselves a class. And we'll call that octopus command. Yep. And obviously, if you're doing this properly as a sort of real program, you'd probably want to be making all of your commands have a common interface or a common inheritance, and new them up with a Windows container so that you can have plugins and all the rest of it. But yeah, not at the moment. And let's steal some of the code from our weather command in true weird. So what do we need there? We need using system.text.expressions. Kill that. And that should be up to this command. Right. So we need a command syntax. So this thing already knows about the nickname of the bot. So what do we want to say?
Deploy version to project. Like just deploy and then the version number.
You reckon?
And then I'd say project there.
Yeah, we're going to argue about semantics already.
If you just do deploy project, then you can pick up the latest.
Say the latest one. You know what I want the latest though.
Yeah, well.
We're not actually going to do it. makes it more difficult. It makes it more difficult.
We're not actually going to use it.
But it makes it. How are you going to know? You're going to have to then look up in Team City what the latest version is, because then you need to inspect Team City as well.
Right. Okay.
On Friday. I think we need to do this in another meeting.
Let's just say there's that. Right. It's just going to deploy a project. So it'll be at nickname deploy space project, and it will just try and deploy the latest build. It doesn't care.
As a bot, I would
Defaults to dev. In fact, I think this user only has access to. I'm not sure it even has access to dev. Actually, I think it's only got access to lock. So it's yeah. So actually no. Think about using the API key rather than this password that will log in as me. But yeah, even better reason to default to lock only. Okay. So we've got an extractor there that's going to a regex there, sorry, that will extract a project. So what we probably also want is we want a public bool is octopus command string with the body of a text. We should just do a return string dot is match body. And then we'll have a public string deploy, which again will take the body of the message, and for the moment it's just going to go return string dot format, because we might not actually get up to hooking it into octopus, but there we go. You tried to deploy project. Extractor dot match body dot groups project. Except we want this to be async, don't we? Because that's what we're going to await on. So my bad, sorry. So public async and it needs to return a task of string. And we're going to do a task.fromFactory task.factory dot.
Just do task.run.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thought that was on the factory, but it's not. Let's go. Is that right?
You need the type. The run thing had angle brackets. So when you
Turn away.
Ah. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Yes. Right. So we now have a little class. It knows whether it thinks the message is an octopus command or not, and it will try and do an asynchronous deployment. So what will happen is if we get as far as hooking this up to the actual octopus exe, what we'll actually set it to do is the octopus exe, you can either choose to run it and exit immediately without a result, or you can block until the deployment is finished, and the executable will actually return you the deployment results. So we'll get as far as actually hooking it up. We'll try and block and show that takes some time. In fact, just for, is there a task.delay? Yeah. Okay, so just to make sure that we actually spot that there is something async happening, I think we can do that. Oh, we'll need to wrap that in. It's going to let me do that. Yeah. And I'll need to return as well, yes, I was just getting that. Okay. Right, does that kind of make sense to everyone? Yeah, all nodding.
So what does take in the main emotes not steal the... sorry, I see you're going to add it into there, are you? Your octopus one.
Oh no, but you're right, aren't you? We're going to have separate. Do we need separate observables? I'm trying to think now, because each time you return it, oh no, it's still coming from the same source, aren't they? That is a good point. So in fact, I think what we want to do we'll get back to that in a moment because we'll need to change it anyway. So we're going to want another method in here to go private static async. Again, this one's never actually going to return anything. So we've got our messages again. This time we don't want to throttle them, but we do want to filter them based on whether we think that they're Octopus commands or not. So Octopus dot is Octopus command.
Do you want the has mentioned in as well?
No, because the Octopus command one already, the regex includes the nickname, so it doesn't need both. Here we're going to sit again in a while true loop. I'm hoping at the end of this it will all work, of course, but there we go. So again, our nice little wait around await method, so that we give up. Yeah, let's actually have a. And so we can go for results, equals await, Octopus dot deploy, message dot event args dot body, and then we can go client dot send new message room message type dot group chat deploy result. Should be the whole thing. Okay, so now we've effectively got two event loops. They're both listening to the same event, but they're each listening independently to the stream. Because yes, I think Richard's right, otherwise they would consume each other's messages. Now the thing is, if we now sit here in our main async task and we await either the main emotes loop or the Octopus handling loop, neither of them exit, so the other one will never start. So there is a task.awaitAll, I believe it's called. So task.awaitAll, which takes params, so we can have main emotes and Octopus handling. So yeah, it's pointing out the fact that now that I've done that, this doesn't actually do any awaiting anymore, so the async keyword is completely pointless. So in fact, we can just do that. So now, hopefully, if I've got everything right, please talk to me, I'd like to be your friend. So let's wait our 4 seconds, for which it ignores everything, and check that we're still, yep, doing stuff. So EmoteBot, deploy, my project. There you go, you see. So because we're not throttling on the deploy command, that actually came back immediately, which is a bit strange because it should have delayed, but obviously I'm not doing something correctly there. Oh, I never actually waited for the delay. Sorry, that would do it. And then after that, the normal, because it's got a mention as well, the normal EmoteBot logic kicks in. we kill that for a moment. So yeah, that's actually one thing that I find one of the easiest things to mess up working with tasks is that if you don't await them, then your program doesn't wait. So that task.delay there was actually doing nothing. That was kicking off a background task saying in 1.5 seconds return void, and then ignoring it completely. Hey ho. So let's just double check that I'm not actually completely lying. Hopefully at this point we should get a delayed response on the deploy thing. So EmoteBot. Can't type. Now, the thing is, of course, as well, is because these aren't throttling, we can keep on stacking these up.
You're not quick enough.
No, I'm not. Yeah. Let's see what happens there. Did I? For that one? Yes, I did. Check that works first. All right, okay. There we go. Now, the thing is about this is that you've seen that wasn't a whole load of code to add to effectively get two independent subprocessors sort of running asynchronously and without bothering each other.
When you send in 5 and you got 2 back, responded to everything. It only responded to the last response is because they'd already replied.
Interesting. How many did I send? It might have crashed again. It doesn't have any error handling, so. Interesting. Okay, I have to look into that one. No, skip until's already happened. It might be something to do with the take rather than on next. So I'd have to look into it. I've got a feeling the take is doing something slightly different. Let's have a very quick, but otherwise I won't. So next.
Might just take the last one command which you send it to, if you send few in a row, so to take the last one.
Yeah.
As it said, it doesn't look into the history.
Yeah. No, I think I've got the wrong method on my observable there, basically. Anyway, something to. No, I'd have to look it up. I haven't used the RX stuff that much myself. But basically, the takeaways for this session, the RX stuff was kind of a bonus, because I think we'll need to wrap up fairly soon. Is that's a sort of more real world example of async and await than I managed to think up last week. It is a very nice interface if you've got sort of independent processes going on like this, especially because each of your processes can be quite simple. You know, it's like this octopus command. It doesn't have to worry about what happens if multiple octopus deploys start happening at once, because they can't. You know, as far as this method is concerned, everything's happening in the synchronous loop, and you can just reason about it as if each of those things is happening in order. The await might mean that another process does something in the middle, but nothing here is going to mess around with the state of your code. So that's pretty nice. And the other one is just sort of, it took me a while, once you're in the asynchronous workflow, it made quite a lot of sense to me. It took me a while to actually work out how to sort of kick them off and wait for the results from the synchronous bit of your code, because you'll nearly always have, you know, a console app that's running it, or a service or something. So that's where these sort of task.awaitAll and the task.run methods come in particularly useful to sort of create, at the top level, the thing that actually kicks off your workflow and starts it running, and at the bottom level, the sort of, okay, I've got a call to a web service that I need to make awaitable, how do I do it? And that's where that task.run method becomes your friend for most simple cases.
Not that we deal with UI, like form stuff, it's good for getting background process that might take some time off of the UI threads as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I was mentioning is in the task.await and wait, you need to read up on it, because I haven't read up on it in any detail. But what you can do is you can actually specify when you're waiting that you're waiting from a UI thread, and you need the result to run on the same thread that you called it from. So effectively, you can sort of pass that handling off to the .NET thread pool, but it will always make sure that your results come back on the UI thread so that you can update the UI. The only thing you have to watch out for on that one is because you've put a constraint on where some of the code can run, at that point it actually becomes possible to write deadlocking code with tasks. Because if you get two tasks that are both waiting to return something on the UI thread and both waiting for each other, they can deadlock and you never get a result.
If you've got it like on a button, press do it, and you grab the button before you start waiting.
Yeah, you can search on Stack Overflow. There's a long and intricate discussion from Mr. Skeet as to how to avoid it. Okay, does that make sense? Sound good? We do have this in our code base already, by the way, just in case you're wondering why we're doing the dev ed on it. So the new PDF rendering system, I believe, uses async and await, and I think there's at least one test harness that does as well.
The GDS one does,
yeah.
Because obviously GDS is taking a long time.
So, yeah, if you want to actually write code with it, you probably want to do a bit more reading, but hopefully this gives you enough to spot it, understand it when you see it. Questions?
You have a task avoid?
That's what that is, effectively. If you've noticed these handling loops, because they're a while loop, they never return anything. So they just take the unparameterized task, whereas if you were going to return something, you'd have to give a return type in there. If you are doing anything but a loop, there are some issues apparently around using returning void tasks. I can't quite remember what it is. I think it's something about the error handling. It doesn't quite work as you would expect. So it's useful for infinite loops and sort of event loops and stuff. But even if you're calling an external service and it's a one-off event, it's best to actually return something, even if it's just a sort of success or fail.
So you actually extensively extra libraries are in, is that right?
No, reactive extensions are extra libraries. They're available on NuGet. Yeah, you need to actually download them. They're sort of semi-open source and they change quite quickly. So I think they're pretty much stable now in the sense of the API, but there's still definitely work going on sort of performance and things for them. And bizarrely, they regularly release them for new programming languages as well. So there's now implementations for Java and JavaScript as well as .NET.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's that then.